past them late. There's two of you are. So who's present there? Who's that staff? I'm just trying to make a list of who Olga Sumati now, yeah. So who's available in lay? Who's at Tupla?
Only two of us.
Who's at Neble Tupla?
Christopher Nia and
Christopher.
Derek Michael.
Christopher and who? Mike.
Derek.
Oh, Derek, okay. Thank you, Tupla. Christopher. I was going through what you all said on Wednesday about 1+ something people like in local culture people, the challenges. Going through what I wrote in it, I've actually table all your thinking here. So this will actually be helpful to look what and come up passing law culture and whether things have changed. But it's good actually looking through that. And I've got those of you who've given your WhatsApp numbers to Roland. So I've shared those numbers. And I've looking at the list, me finding out too, lo bands, people married line stuff too, so that's good. And good spirit. So I think because I was thinking of as a big group to go through the introduction on Wednesday. And I think you missed 60 past them your Wednesday class. Now I've had a few pointers about the reflection exercise too, which you have to do each week. I will go through that also. Lo side lo me too, I think me quick time because I just relied on what Roland has shared with you in terms of talk lo background blame lo me background blame me stuff lo counseling and psychology and mental health. That's where I did something else at Unitech, but I retrained when we moved to Australia after Africa. So that's been my work within the Aboriginal population here. Worked with Indigenous people for 7 years, mainly in mental health and counseling, and worked with mainstream health department law for New South Wales. So that's where I came out from, and then my research was influenced by looking at Indigenous thinking and knowledge, which we brush aside and we look at Western approaches to our learning. But there's so much that has to be validated and bring to the forefront of any thinking in terms of passing blue me, thinking blue me. So that's where I was in terms of my own work, my own journey. I walk about blue plan Lucy walk lo PNG, and then we worked with the church. So a lot of before we had the kids, we were already working with the church. Ron left his job as an economist. I left my job with the lands department. Me walk one time also as a cartographer, walk him all plan blow. But now me switch go walk him live blow man as a counselor, as helping people in that area, especially in mental health. So that's where my work area comes from there. And when we were in Africa, me schooling all girls, we did homeschool. Even in Samoa, I did homeschool. So it's everything sort of, when you're working and when you have God in your leadership, then you can be multi-skilling too. God allows you to work in different areas, whether in health or education, in pastoral. You can be a pastor, but you can be helping other people. Business law, learn him, help in education, train him, or beginning it too. So let's not limit ourselves what we can do as pastors. And Jesus is a very good model for that he was an integrated, holistic person in that sense. So that's a little bit about myself. So I've worked in that area from here with the First Nations in Canada, from working here with the Aborigines in Australia, and working with the mental health team in London also. So I've sort of been flexible in that sense, and my own research was looking at kinship systems as a safety net for healing, for restoring communities. And that's one thing that comes out a lot more in cultural anthropology, introducing that, the importance of knowing where you've come from and seeing the blueprint of what Jesus' own genealogy, on clan blame. He knew that. So beside talking, I'm no good last story. That's all about tabu, helping me too, because that's where a lot of youth find that they don't belong when they come from mixed marriages. So they mix parenting from different provinces outside the country. That it's up to us to help them understand that. So yes, so that's where I've coming from. So my passion is restoring those connections in terms of clan and kinship systems. Because I'm asked you me, I'm impacting worldview you me. So we look at some of the things that impacts, worldview. What are the things that impacts that? So we're looking at that this morning. And the other thing that I wanted to say also, which I didn't point out on Wednesday, was there's a small task. You don't have to be assessed on it, but it'll help me. You introduce yourself, just half a page or a page. I've been doing this since I've been teaching there, CLC for the last 3 years. We've been at CLCC now since 2017, but I wasn't teaching until 3 years ago, so I was doing my studies. But me ask him also, Martin, write him, because I don't know any of you guys. I don't know your stories, because for me, stories are important. There's individual stories, there's community stories, there's church stories. But for your own story, I need to know that, especially your level of education, how far you've come. So when I'm marking your papers, I'm not using the same paintbrush to mark everyone. Some have gone to Bible school, some have not. Some have gone to grade 12, to tertiary education, some haven't. So rather than me just blindly marking it's not fair to mark that person against another person. So that'll help me. Look low. When I'm education, and I look at your content, how you write in paper blue. So that's why I do that exercise. I ask you to do that. So if you could do that, just tell me, like Christmas blue, where you'll come here, province you come from, how far did you go in your education? Tell me if you're married, talking province blue too. So it'll give me an idea, especially the education experiences and work experience. So I'm looking talk I missed on Wednesday, but that's important for me. So I don't be hard on marking someone who me mama ya me sorry too. So me got this lie this Latin thing. So that's just a little bit of stuff. So just introduce yourself in that, write him little story of this law. And I've had a few queries about the reflective exercise also. Will probably by the end of this class, you'll probably in a better position, and I'll explain that at the end, Because what I've done, I've taken down the one that I put, because I kept adding other stuff. So I put in the latest version of the PowerPoint. I've added more because I'm doing it differently. This year's classes, I've started from scratch. I have to do everything from scratch using textbooks as a core book to go by. And these first few weeks, especially this week, next week, I'm trying to lay the foundation, which I've never done in the past 2 years. I've gone straight to teaching the raw stuff. But I want you to understand what is worldview, what impacts that, how does worldview impact values and belief systems, and where does the gospel comes into that, and looking at Melanesian worldview and the other worldviews in terms of understanding the Western biblical worldview, indigenous worldviews. Our worldview, Melanesian, is very same as the Jewish worldview, which is integrated, the Hebrew worldview. So we'll cover all that. So what we'll do is go through the PowerPoint this morning. Then towards the end, that I've got a discussion point to there. So I'm trying to break it down, doing different models and metaphors to make that point of for you understanding what impacts it. How does worldview happen? Did I just born into it? So we'll tease that out. Has anyone got any question before I go into that? So I'll start that WhatsApp group. I'll get that going today. I've got all the numbers from Roland, so I'll get it. So you just send me a message. Any queries, you send it through that too, which is good, or on message on Cluster. So even with the weekly reflection, send it onto Cluster. I'll set up that too on Cluster. Okay. So if anyone got anything, otherwise I'll go.
So one question from Yali.
Okay.
When will be the due date of this weekly reflection task?
Say that again,
Due
sorry.
date today?
Sorry.
The
Reflection next week. You'll send it.
Next
It's
week,
every
okay,
week, yeah. Like this week, no, you start it next week. You can send it next Wednesday or Friday, yeah. So it's a week.
Okay.
So which means it's a Wednesday and Friday lectures, and then you start thinking of what you need to write in terms of the questions that comes up. So as I was saying on Wednesday, it's a way low, making you be part of your own learning to understand what it is. Because as I was saying, I found out that some will say my own doctor will notice probably just grade 6 or grade 8. Some of us, our concept of actually getting stuff is very limited. So even this will help you to tease out. So if you send it, then I can pick it out. Someone is struggling to understand that, so I can make that personal connection with you through your WhatsApp and explain that too. So I guess I'm going an extra mile to just do that for you guys. So because some of the concepts too, it's coming from somewhere, so some of us have to deconstruct it, unpack it, break him, go down low, kiss him low level low where you understand him. Yeah. So that's what I've been trying to do. Simplify, go down. We stopped. We've looked at that when we've all realized that we all need a worldview. Appreciate all your comments. As I was saying, I'm starting to put all those together. And I'll probably, at the end, I might ask a few people I didn't get their names correctly. I've spelled them, even cross-check that with the list. I can't seem to make the names out, but I'll do that if we have time at the end. So we went through the course outline. We've gone through this. So I put number 5 down, which I didn't add on Wednesday. How you introduce yourself, as I've just said. I think mainly it helps me how I can mark your paper in a more honest and constructive way, rather than just using the same approach to marking every student's in the same bracket anyway. Thank you. So that's that. Then we looked at that. We all have a way of looking at worldview. What is worldview? And this guy Kraft is a guy that came up with these definitions of worldview that actually culture shapes it. Then we looked at that. The worldview is like an onion. When you cut an onion, it's in it. So everything else sits on that. And then you said, but how did that form? So we look at that. We look at Paul's, which is the textbook we are using. For these first few weeks, I'm pulling in from other sources to help us, but we'll stick to Paul Herbert's, and I think the other guy, Hall, spoke to is good. There's so much resources available. Our main textbook we'll use is Paul's. So they talks about that. So you could actually almost say, and I was thinking about it's like culture and worldview. Then you can almost transfer that to, could Christ be that core? And that's when we look at the Christian worldview in that sense. So we'll be covering all the different worldviews anyway. As I put in the course outline, the third week. Okay, and then we look at why we need a worldview, because it guides us, gives us answers, and it shapes culture and identity. And then you're saying, but what is that worldview? That's why I'm getting to that. Okay, so I broke it down. Where did I come from? Who am I? Why am I here? What is right and wrong? And then we finished here on Wednesday with the summary of why we need a worldview, because it tells us who we are, where we come from, why we are here, how to live, and what happens when we die. So we have different platforms to analyze it from a Catholic perspective, from a Christian perspective. It also gives us identity in our families and clans and culture. And as Christians, we need a worldview based on God's word, so that our Melanesian life is guided by His truth. And I think that's what we're aiming for. And as I talk, I always cross over to even to the psychology and counseling, pastoral counseling. You always want to do the best. Like for me, I was trained in the secular thinking, but as a Christian, I contextualize a lot of that stuff. So I did my master's in counseling from that space. So when I'm working in that, even a lot of Christians don't like psychologists. They don't like the theory around it, but that's something else too. As Christians, we can work that one out to integrate the ideas from psychology is practical, but Christian, you rely on God's word and God's Holy Spirit. So we'll look at this. The next bit is, where's it moving? There. So we look at the Christian worldview and others versus others. Great, I'm just scrolling here. So I think I just left it on this page in the last slide, but I'm thinking on a different level. So I said, no, I've got to break it down I've got to go through each one so you can understand. Because it's easier for me to just put bullet points. And I've talked with my husband too on this. He says, oh, you just put bullet points. I said, but I'm a Papua New Guinean. I will do it my way, even write more, because that's how people will read it. Because if I just use PowerPoints and I speak, then I can lose some of you guys. So this is what I did first, and then I went back. I said no. So I've broke it down to actually put meanings to those bullet points. So the Christian worldview is God is creator, and the Bible begins with God as the source of all things. This is just the introduction. So when we actually look at some other PowerPoints later on, it'll stress a bit more on this. So it means life has purpose, order, and meaning. Nothing is an accident. Creation reflects God's goodness. And humans in God's image, we were created in that. People are not just animals or spirits. We are made in God's image. So we can see that this gives every person dignity, value, and responsibility to care for creation and one another. But sin broke that. Human disobedience brought separation from God, broken relationships, and suffering. This explains why the world is full of pain, injustice, and conflict. But then Jesus brought salvation, and God's answer in Jesus is Jesus Christ, who came to heal, forgive, and restore. And through him we are reconciled to God. So the other worldviews is the spirits and ancestors. So when we look at the Melanesian worldview, we'll look at some of his spirit and ancestors in Melanesian. So this is the other worldviews. In Melanesian, many primal societies where our primary belief is in animism, where we still have that, even though we go to church, that's still part of us. So we in Melanesian, many primal societies, people believe spiritual beings and ancestors control daily life. Some do that. Fear rituals and sacrifices are used to maintain balance and protection. And that came out too. One of the things someone said about their culture is sorcery, because you use it for protection. So what's the challenge to that? So that just came out on Wednesday. So that's passing Blumia. So money, power, and success in the Western worldview influenced them in their lives, in their own, in terms of wealth, education, career. And these values can become idols. You can go too far that those things become God to you. And there's a competitive spirit that comes into that. And then there's inequality. You see the haves and the have-nots, those who don't. And it creates those class divisions, different levels of all rich blood, some blood poor. Inequality comes through that. But our mission is, as Christians, is to live and teach Christian worldview. And Christians are called to live out God's truth in our daily life. And sort of resisting false worldview and showing the way of Christ. But then we live with all this stuff in Melanesia, so this is the challenge for you and I. We have the gospel, but we still have passing low place and stuff. And those two go hand in hand in some ways. So now, challenge Blue Yumi. So put some, please check out all the references in terms of Bible readings. So this means teaching in families, churches, and communities that life's true foundation is found in God alone. And this is the thing, you can talk about that, but if it doesn't touch the worldview, the core value, then nothing changes. And this is what we're getting to unpack that, to understand that. And you can sit there and you can think, when I'm kind of something, come up, send this Lord church. Or maybe I stop year in, year out. Maybe I say no more. So that's where you start questioning. So I've just put this in as to help you guys. I've just Christian worldview sort of sums up what we've read there, other worldviews, and our mission. It just sort of sums up what we've just done there, what I've just read out. And then we try you meet my lost story, the topics here. I've used a tree here, then I've used a tree in a river in somewhere else, and I've used an iceberg, which you may know that iceberg here, local call place. So we'll come to that. So I've used the tree as a talk piece representing worldview, law, story, law, Islam. So I've got that. Melanesian worldview is a tree from root to fruit. So the roots of worldview is a deep belief and step inside. And then you might say, what are those deep beliefs? We'll cover that in another slide there. Then the trunks and the branches, and also values, not belief system you make up. And when it comes to the fruit, kakaya, all symptoms below what's happening inside. Suppose good plus sit down, stop, root and stop below, good plus sit down. Papa go the step inside, good plus family sit down, go clean one time community. Kakailo divine by come up good. Your behavior by good plus. But suppose roots him stop below, plan behavior is stop, we come. Kakai blame to by this in this la. So I'm some topics that are solo this la. So a healthy roots and good black kakai, good fruits. So when we look at the tree, this is the worldview, deep beliefs, and Paul Herbert's book talks about those deep beliefs, middle ones, and the outer, which is the behavior. So we'll go through that. So these are some blood topics alone. Helping you me your looks away. So your question might be, but what are those? What's in my roots? And this could be a good exercise too for you. I started doing it for my own worldview. I did that. What influences? And then when I realized, I was saying to Rosin this morning, I said it's like one of the metaphors I did for my thesis, where I use model of a house. The foundation was respect, and all the pillars within the house represent one plus something low place, like church, government, language, kinship system, bunatara in our top place, bride price, moiety system, which is an anthropological term for small piece in, big piece in, where you marry them. No, law same side, you married the girl on the other side. So I put that all in my research, the different pillars that creates good blessing down, Bonekini. So you can do that. Looking at this, you can do that. And this is really one of the reflection I'll put in for you to think through your own worldview. What is impacting you? What is one thing that is impacting you to behave the way you are, to bring you to where you are in CLTC? So that's the roots. We don't see that, but what is in there affects the trunks and affects the fruits. Okay? So these are the values and beliefs. If your values and beliefs are rooted in sorcery or in gambling or in fight or anemia, empire affect value na belief blow you. Nakakai blow to by kirapping behavior narakain. Okay, so I'm trying to break it down. So you like him thinking good Lord Isla. And this is what I took you another example. And this is Hall's cultural iceberg model, where this side, Lord, the blue one, am height, yeah, you know, looking. Or same root blondie, why you know, looking. And those are the deep, deep culture blue you me, communication style, social roles. These are, you can't see them. The emotional expression, blah, you may walk about. If you've gone through a trauma, it's buried in there. If you're talking from a counseling psychologist, psychological platform, there's deep trauma that you bury in there. You don't talk about it. Whether you've been abused as a child, you bury him inside Lodisla. You don't talk about it. But your behavior shows it on the surface. And it's only this small percentage. So what is actually said, the iceberg culture, which refers to Hall's model, it only shows only about 10% is visible. Small, 10% you can see. But the rest 90% buried. So when it shows low behavior and like that's all. Because what's cooking and boiling underneath you can't see. So while the remaining 90% is hidden beneath the surface, this hidden part, which includes deeply ingrained beliefs and values and worldviews, and those are profoundly influence our behavior and how we act, and how we make our decisions to do what we do. So this only comes through when one form of unpacking that is through counseling, or you talk blah, or something happens, you have to talk about certain things. And that for me as a counselor, and for me to work in the area of mental health and psychology and all that, this is where people come. But what do we do with PNG? And I was actually talking to a Highlander lady, with plus sister blow me and blow Hagantu and Sablo here. And we had some interesting discussion about 2 or 3 weeks ago. And she said, Tandy, me blood throw my camp stop. So it opened my eyes to Harib story blame. All missinare to come, all give him trauma me blah, all you rouse him, bloody with blooding thing, passing blow, culture blame blah. And she had a very interesting point there. So how do you model Christ when you talk to people? Only know him talk. Because all sit down law, all things stop. I'm not sure if you would agree with that, same in your culture that she was saying. That all early missionaries only rousing could plus something to all. So it was an interesting discussion. How she brought that up, I'm not sure, but she always calls me to go have coffee or lunch there, and I like story or something. So a lot of these stuff you can bury them, and I'm talking about some of the stuff we were doing, the counseling, actually role playing some of the social issues that come up from our communities that no one talks about. So I was saying the church hasn't got counseling platform in there. So I challenged those PTH1, you create spaces in your church to start talking about this stuff. I said, but Mama, maybe I like walking here. Yeah, if God convicts you, you can. Because God is looking for people to start something new. We've just become of the circle. We just go round and round. Step off that circle and say, I want to make a difference in my church, in my community. So we have to start a counseling service law. You have to start, call him counseling, plus the story. Things like puri, things like incest, things like, you may not talk to them. We just preach stuff that most of you go, I'm lowly here. You don't talk about those stuff because who's going to deal with it? It's become part and parcel of the community. We've normalized it when you hear that word. It's become normal. It's become part of the community. But no, it imprisons people. So those behaviors I held come from those 90% that are buried. 90% are in the root. So that's why we were saying ministry has to touch the core of the worldview. But how do we do that? We'll explore that. So that's also topics a lot is la. And then I was saying, but I've got to come to something where it'll help you. But what shapes that? What shapes my worldview? So I know I just went online and on Google search scholars and they've got some mistakes here. Society they put twice, but I've put another one here which I've tried to that one. But this is the one that's I got, which is I said I've got to try to make it for you to understand what shapes that worldview. It's the things that you grew up into, the society, today's world, from when you come up, this I'll talk about that, our stories that's in the next slides. But for now, I'll just talk about this. Those different things, life experiences, our society, our culture, our religion, Facebook, even now, media, peers, our family, clan, they all impact on that worldview. They shaped our worldview. So our worldview is the lens through which we see and interpret life, as we were saying on Wednesday. It is shaped by many influences. It's those influences on us. As it says there, all these interact to form how we understand reality and make decisions. So that's what shapes that. And then I said, okay, we are people of stories. We learn things through stories. Everything passed down through generations through stories. So our story and worldviews are formed through that way too. So from birth, me just put him on zemlo, make him clear lo you me too. We enter a world filled with competing ideas, plenty idea. Time you may look, you may learn lo community, want the mama, auntie, and then you move out from there, you start go to school, you picking up some ideas more there in the community, and then you leave that, you go to high school, boarding school, you pick up more ideas, whether you go through, you leave that, you go join the groups, the gangs in the streets, you pick up ideas from there, they all form your worldview. Or if you leave school and you want to join the Puri group and you join a cult group, that still informs, that has impact on your worldview. Okay? So from birth, we enter into that. And we expose through observing, through mimicking, through imitating. So that's how we learn things within our culture. And we observe these worldviews not as complete systems, but in bits from family, culture, religion, education, peers, from media. And even now, as we sit here, your worldview is also being impacted by your learning, the different things you are learning. And much of this influence is subtle. very quiet, shaping us as much by what is left unsaid or through the non-spoken, through the behavior, how people, because behavior speaks volume too. So that's why you will start to think, hey, Mimboni come. You will notice Misa switch Golo Solomon Pisinaya. Mama Karimi come. Lik you go to Sunday school. You go to Lotu. You go to all can something you done is low, all custom something low place. Those start to impact you and you. As I was saying on Wednesday, some of those Sunday school teachings and my auntie and mom's instructions kept me safe. They were instructions. They were like road maps. They were maps for me that kept me away from dangers when I was at Unitec. And I vouch for that. I'm not ashamed to speak about it because I value that and I value those instructions that I grew up with, and all of you would sit in the same. You would say that my uncle, I grew up with my uncle or my aunties, and you sort of learn under their leadership. So a lot of that shapes who we are. And worldview formation is not static, which means not still. It unfolds like a story. Your worldview changes and keeps growing. Okay? So it beginnings with conflicts, with resolutions, and you check stuff and say, why don't you have conflict within you about different things that come across your life in terms of relationships, in terms of belief systems, where you conflict within culture and church and Christianity. I want to believe this, but if I'm sick, I need to go and see the class man past them. So we have all those conflicts that then you come to your own conclusion. Okay, me lo to man me go bait lo bait and lo mina me go lo house because lo house no bait and lo stone lo and something. So we have those decisions. We make decisions on what we've grown up with. While the core beliefs may remain, details shifts through new experiences, relationships, and ideas. Okay? So beneath the visible events of our lives, deeper forces, that's ourselves. We struggle with ourselves. It's either we accept who we are, or we love who we are, or we challenge who we are. That understanding, our learning is produced by ourselves. So ourselves, understanding, convictions, and when it comes to that acceptance of Jesus, it's us. It's an individual thing, isn't it? And values shape who we become, and in short, our worldview grows as an inner story. Because all those things impacts that core, and that core takes you around from your village, out of your village, across borders. Okay? That inner story that radiates outward into our actions and choices, how we behave and how we make those choices. I make those choices against that yardstick. I can't make my choices over that. No, we must walk in. Because something mixed up grow one time. So a lot of us, even we as parents, we force our values into our kids, even when they're grown up or close to married or got Poroman. And I said to a couple in London, Lucy Moll, what you've taught them as kids growing up, holy God. A decision and making laws and by marrying them start. Your job now is to just love them through that. We are not good at that. we I was wrong in London to help someone who was from home. Bring me lo leyu, finding beginning. I am Sagoya, me lesbian is now me to. Lucy mem. We are good at forcing our projecting, that's one word. We project our belief system, our feelings, our frustration. We don't know it, we just act it out onto our children. So we don't now, Larry mem. Your job now is to just accept and love her through this. Because what you've laid, it's sorry, but to this day, I'm good blame Mary. I'm still stubborn than Papa God. Our family blame London. So that's worldview in that sense there. So I just put this in to stress that point that I've been saying, the past experience, the rest we've covered all that, but just those 3 circles. The past experience and knowledge plus present experience and situations equal present worldview. It impacts your worldview now, even now. So all those, from time come, if you are in 100 years old, from when you were born, come, plus your present now, 2025, today, Friday, the 26th. Past, present, plus that equals. It forms who you are, how you perceive stuff. Okay? So this is just another version of what I was doing before, what shapes our worldview. And this, you can do this, as I was saying, this could be one of the reflection that you'll do as an exercise. Do something similar like this. So I've given you for this week, but I could do something like that, or I could do something different. But this could be something you can do. What shapes your worldview? You can think through that and put it for yourself, because it's yours. So that's all on there. And then what shapes our Melanesian worldview? And we'll look at a lot of this stuff next week. So we have land and environment, clan and community, customs and traditions, culture. This is all culture, religion and spirituality, history and storytelling, which is very much part of our Melanesian tradition, economy and subsistence. Even in my pillar, I put one for the Tolai. Thinking of my Cornwall word for it now. It's microfinance. I put it down. Working like business here. We put into a lot of place. That's part of culture. That's what's one of the things that makes who we are. You go to Rabaul, you go to market, you look in. But you go losing market, you go to Olik place, you look in market stuff. Salim Kakai stuff. Salim Kakai. But you know, Angere always find food on the road. Always Salim Kakai on the road. Prep him low. All banana leaves, nice stuff. So economy and subsistence, leadership and authority, we have our own way too, but we can translate that to the modern way of living. But we have that in our communities. Language is a big one. So that's some of the big about when you do it for you on the personal level, you'll be surprised to discover some of those things. You probably have never thought about them. Because we just go along with the flow. We don't stop to think, what's actually impacting me? Is it my faith? Is it my upbringing? Is it my finance? Is it the family that backs me, or is it my